Yo, what's up, boys? It's Betta here with my Cold DoT Trickster League Starter Guide for 3.22. Before getting into the details, Elementalist is better suited for cold damage over time, as the damage is way more. However, I prefer Trickster as it provides awesome sustain, speed, and mitigation. But the actual main reason is that I will transition the build to intelligent stacking Whispering Ice later down the line. With this being said, my setup is optimized for efficiency, speed, zero cost, or having to rely on any specific items until early raid maps in order to gather enough currency for the Whispering Ice transition by around about day 7 or so, maybe earlier, depends on how things go. The current footage is with Solo Southbound Act 1 to 4 campaign gear that is literally shit, okay? Like, it really is, and yet it still speeds through white and yellow maps without any issues at all. Except for some map bosses that do hit like trucks, obviously. The build can be improved on easily by adding in some more supports and uniques to the mix, maybe even some clusters, which I will do once I do get into red maps. So, subscribe and ring the bell to stay updated on my latest videos or live streams to follow along, as this is a strong, speedy, and realistic league starter. Also, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, please. A quick summary of the build is that we stack up cold damage over time for our 3 main skills, being Vortex, that leaves a cold damage over time area of effect, along with Cold Snap to generate frenzy charges if enemies were killed in the area's damage over time. Not to mention, it also has a fantastic freeze, along with our third ability being Creeping Frost, that creates a chilling area of cold damage over time, which lingers to nearby enemies and it lasts for around about like 6 seconds or so. To gain more damage, Frostbite and Frostbomb reduces enemy resistances, which is most useful on bossing alongside our Enfeeble to take less damage as our second curse. For utility, I'll make use of Frostblink to deal extra damage, blinking directly into the middle of packs, but you can instead use Flame Dash or even Shield Charge to be extra speedy. Our defense is chilling and freezing enemies before they can hit us, but just in case, we run Purity of Elements for ailment immunity and resistances, along with our Grace for the extra evasion rating. Don't forget the awesome sustain and extra defensive layers that Trickster also offers us, especially capped spell suppression. The build's playstyle is really satisfying yet comfortable, with the basic combo of running around to keep Vortex up as it's on left click, and then Frost blinking directly into packs, then Cold Snapping a pack for frenzy charge generation while throwing out a random Creeping Frost or 2 at any other surrounding packs of enemies, and just pretty much repeating that. I also randomly use a Frost Bomb on some white packs or stronger enemies alongside Frostbite and Enfeeble, obviously, which is best suited for using against bosses and harder enemies. That's it. Just pretty much repeat this rotation. It's pretty simple, but it does take a little bit of getting used to. Just a quick side note, you cannot stack the same multiple cold damage over time skill. Only one of each skill will count the damage being dealt. For example, you can't have 10 Creeping Frost zones dealing damage to one enemy. So spam less during your bosses and focus more on movement. Unlike me, I run into everything, especially balls. Right to the face, boy! For the pros, it is a smooth leveling experience, and it's got decent clear speed. The build also requires no investment up until getting to red maps, and then it is pretty safe with your chills and freezes occurring on majority of the enemies. And it also only needs 2 to 3 4 links until the end of yellow maps, where minor investments are needed. In terms of the cons, the build can feel rather button intensive, which might feel pretty overwhelming at times, but you will get used to it. The build is also rather vulnerable to physical hits when our evasion fails. Until later mitigation, we will grab endurance charges or even maybe Arctic armor to make this less of an issue. Alright, quickly jumping over into the path of building over here, how you will be leveling the build exactly and everything. I've got detailed notes here underneath the notes section with everything that you pretty much require. I've tried my best to break down every single thing that is needed for the build. However, I might have missed one or two things, and I do apologize in advance for that. Starting off in Act 1, you'll be using Freezing Pulse, linked to Chance to Poison, and Added Cold or Lightning, whichever one you have got the respectable socket colors for. And then at level 4, we will be using a Frost Bomb and Frost Blink linked to Arcane Surge, which must be kept at level 4 maximum in order to keep it up pretty much all of the time. And then once we hit level 10, to pick up Clarity for some extra mana regeneration and Flame Dash, you must replace Frost Blink. This is obviously optional. I will stick to Frost Blink as it does quite a bit of damage and does help to clear from one pack to the next one when it's off of cooldown. And then at level 12, you must pick up Creeping Frost and buy a efficacy gem and link that to Creeping Frost. In terms of the skill tree, in Act 1, you'll just be picking up damage, some more elemental damage, some more damage, and more damage, and more damage, and then a little bit of life. Getting into Act 2, the very first thing you must do is buy a Jade Amulet for dexterity requirements, and then drop Freezing Pulse for Creeping Frost linked to efficacy, Added Cold, or Lightning. Or if you really want to, you can use Wintertide brand efficacy, Chance to Poison with Added Cold, or even Lightning. This is pretty much optional. Maybe you want to run both of them. Just make sure to drop Freezing Pulse. And then getting over onto level 16 is when we get to pick up our Cold Snap, and then you'll link that to Controlled Destruction and Added Cold Damage. For our aura, we'll pick up our Trustworthy Skitterbots, giving us some extra shock and chill effect, which is fantastic. For Act 2 on the skill tree, obviously after you picked up your damage and your life, you'll path over and grab Snowforged as soon as possible alongside the Elemental Mastery, so hits over 25% chance, treats enemy elemental resistances as if they're inverted. And then we'll come and pick up some damage over time multi alongside with some life. And then we head on over to the AoE wheel. In terms of Act 3, as soon as you hit level 24, you'll have access to Frostbite. And then you must use this on strong rares or bosses. And once you hit level 28, we'll then pick up our Zoomy Vortex, link that to Efficacy, Elemental Focus, and Hypothermia. Please do note that you get the Hypothermia support and the Vortex gem itself from completing the library quest. It will need 2 Orbs of Chance. However, if you have a Orb of Fusing or even 2 of them, you can go to the vendor in town and pick up your 2 Orbs of Chance instead. And then also just to add in real quick, you can use Shield Charge linked to faster attacks if you want to be faster, but do just note that it does need a shield, obviously. For our auras, you must drop Skitterbots and then run Purity of Elements for the early elemental resistances and ailment immunity, and then grab Grace for a later stage at around Act 10 or so. We'll be able to only fit this in. At the end of the act, you must do your normal lab for sustain. What's amazing about the normal lab is that we pick up Polymath. This gives us life, energy shield, and mana recovery on killing enemies according to however many masteries you have picked up. And then obviously it also does help out by giving us extra damage. For Act 3, obviously you'll continue and pick up the AoE wheel over here. Then you'll come on over and pick up Season of Ice. But most importantly, what we really want is the Cold Mastery over here. So your chills from your hits always reduce action speed by at least 10%. This makes things a lot safer for the build. For Act 4, you must refer to the skill section under the skill set of what you should be running with which supports and that. This setup will take you all the way through until around about your first red map, and then obviously you need to buy any supports that you do not have, or you can buy them at a later stage. And you must try your very best to get 3-4 links in order to complete the setup. Please do also remember to craft resistances on gear and the percent cold damage on weapons, which costs 4 alterations. I think this is at around level 30. And then the percent damage over time, which is 6 alterations. This is at around level 55, I believe, or a little bit later. And then the percent cold damage over time, which costs 8 alterations. this is only accessible once you're into your early maps. Do not waste time trying to get perfect gear. Focus on your links and your colors. It is really not worth it trying to get an extra 10 life or some stupid shit on gear when you can just continuously keep on going from map to map to map. Alright, and then once you hit Act 5, you must grab the Granite Flask. This is for the armor, so we don't get one shot during the acts while we're running through, and you can acquire this after killing Justicar Casticus, the balls dude, you know, hanging balls, yeah, that guy. And then you must do your crew lab at around about Act 6 or 7 for the action speed, which really does make a massive difference. You'll notice it immediately after you've done your lab. Right, then getting into Act 10, you want to pick up a Silver Flask for Onslaught after you rescue Bannon from Plague Wing. And then once you have killed Katava in Act 10, you must double check resistances and links, then get to mapping ASAP. Just make sure that you have got your gems set up accordingly, obviously. Right, and then for the skill tree from Act 4, until picking up Crew Lab at around about level 55, we will path over and grab Breath of Ram for extra cold damage. And then we will start then picking up all of our reservation nodes. So we'll pick up Influence alongside Charisma for the juicy reservation efficiency, along with Mind Drinker for the mana mastery, which also gives mana reservation efficiency. This is very helpful. Right, and then once into maps, pretty much all we're going to be doing is just picking up some extra damage and survivability around the tree wherever we can, filling in as much as possible, and then obviously getting into red maps, and later I'll pick up some more defense, and then the increased effects of chill and the intensity in that for more AoE. As I mentioned with the chill effect and AoE. So you've got into red maps. Now, how the hell do you even upgrade the build? Well, over here I've got week 1 Crucible characters for reference, so you can have different ideas on what to upgrade exactly. However, for me, my personal goal is to reach T10s and be 78 plus and pick up Vol Cold Snap and maybe a 5 or a 6 link. Then grab Ram Gaze with Bitter Dream for free links, a Apex mode Jewel for extra spell damage, and then a Mark of the Shaper for even more spell damage. And then I plan to get some chill effect and area of effect from Intensify support instead of controlled destruction on Vortex and Cold Snap over here underneath the skills. I've already got it added over here. And then maybe I'll also add in a Yoke of Suffering and Olesia's Delight, depending on how I feel that the build is going. And then it is to do Merciless as soon as possible once gear and links are sorted, going into early reds. And then very importantly over here early on, you do not want any unique gloves, boots, chest or helm, as we take the 15% suppress mastery. So all 4 of those must have evasion rating and energy shield in order for this mastery to give us a 15% chance to suppress spell damage. Obviously, I don't have it. I have ES and energy shield on all of my gear because I was a noob and just rushing as much as possible. And then obviously, I will be replacing this mastery when I pick up Uber Lab as we get suppression from it, or unless I get some suppression on gear, then I'll probably drop it. And then lastly is to just make some minor upgrades when possible to improve both damage and survivability along down the line. I expect to transition the build to Whispering Ice by day 7 or so with at least 1000 intelligence, just with a simple, cheap setup, nothing too bizarre. Alright, so while I was assembling everything and that for the guide, I came up with some unique item ideas that could be used for the build to get even more damage with my community. So early on, you can pick up a Ram Gaze for early huge damage over time. Obviously, conflicts with the Suppress Mastery, so you should have Uber Lab before probably grabbing this. And then a Carcass Jack for area of effect and extra damage for even more clear speed, perhaps. And then a Pandemonious, this will be a endgame option for penetration and damage. And then, as I mentioned earlier, with Olesia's Delight, I want to pair this with a Yoke of Suffering. The reason being is that you get 4 affliction charges, and then you can shock enemies with it as well, alongside the Yoke of Suffering. And you can use Skitterbots with Infernal Legion, so you get the extra 15% increased damage, as enemies will be both shocked, ignited, and chilled, so that will apply with the Yoke of Suffering. And then a Algor Mortis, maybe there's some potential damage here, you could use it if you want to. And then a Coward's Legacy Bout for huge low life damage boost alongside a Pain Attunement. And what's best paired with the Coward's Legacy is a Laurie's Lantern Ring. This gives quite a lot of extra defense, as being hit is lucky. And then, of course, is the Mark of the Shaper, which I'll chase for second. I'm chasing for Bitter Dream first for damage. And then the Apex mode alongside the Intensify supports, and the Cost of Mastery, Stacking Chill, and so forth for the extra Bone Chill damage. And then a Valkyr's Guidance, which turns your cold damage into poison pretty much. This could be potentially a whole new build. It is up to you if you would like to maybe experiment with it. Alright, and then do just remember, I will be live posting update videos on my progression towards Whispering Ice and thereafter. And should you need any help, please join my community Discord and ask underneath the help section. I'm always willing to help. Alright, and that is it for the entire guide. I hope you enjoy the build Exile. And if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to stay updated with my latest videos. Also, consider dropping a like on the video should you have enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video or live stream Exile.